So there's a question that's been fascinating me lately, which is, why is it so hard to get people to retain skills? I do a lot of teaching people how to have effective conflicts. And I can teach so many good skills on how to talk openly about your feelings and reflect your partner and empathize and listen. And then you have a fight and everything goes out the window. So I started doing some research on this idea of state dependent learning. And a little bit of the background on this. Apparently, the idea of state dependent learning has been around since the 1700s. In 1784, a French aristocrat named Marquis de Poyasseur conducted experiments on hypnosis and found that people in a hypnotic state couldn't remember events until they were hypnotized again. You get to the 1960s, and this guy, Donald Overton, starts running experiments on how drugs and memory interact. And there's all these experiments where they basically give two groups of people sets of numbers or some sort of sequence to recall. And one of them, they're like, okay, we're going to get you high and we're going to give you these numbers to recall. And then we're going to test you again on your recollection of the numbers when you're not high or when you are high. So we've got like four conditions, right? Like numbers when not high, tested when not high, numbers when not high, tested when high, numbers when high, tested with not high, numbers when high, tested with high. And the interesting thing that they find is that people's recollection is vastly better if you test them when they're in the same state. So, like, we think that getting high impairs your memory. Actually, people that were high and then were tested again when they were high on the same numbers had better recollection than people who were, not high and then tested again when they were high. You wanted to be in the same state in recalling something, basically, was the idea. And I think there was about the same level of capacity if you were high and then high tested again as not high and not high tested again. So it really is like being in this state that gets you. And so if we transfer that to thinking about teaching skills, we're training people all these skills when they're in relatively regulated states. We're like, okay, I'm going to teach you reflecting skills that you can use when you're angry with your partner. Your partner is going to say, I'm upset at you. And I want you to say back, you're upset at me. Wow. And then when we get angry, actually, this all goes out the window because we're not in the same state. So something I've been playing with is we run these events called Fight Labs at Authentic Revolution every week. And the whole idea of the lab, we're communication teachers, like we have all sorts of tools on how to deal with conflict. This is not a place where we're teaching those tools. It's just a place where we're like, okay, we want each person to bring triggering scenarios. Like, what are the places you feel like you did the worst? You did not know how to confront this. You had a massive blowout with your partner. You were in front of a room and you got super triggered by a participant and didn't know what to do. Two people were fighting and you didn't know how to manage it. Bring those. We're going to role play them and we're just going to try out skills. And the point of the event is to get triggered, which is fun because we've got so much stuff out there these days that's like psychological safety and don't trigger people. And this is an event where we're just like, no, we're here to get you upset. And we do pre-framing and we kind of have like, okay, don't get so upset that you can't think. Give a pause if you feel like you're past your limit, or we'll pause them if we think that's going on. But we have this experience where it's like, okay, someone's playing out this really intense scenario. Like, say somebody wants to play out a conversation with their father. Like, I've been someone's Asian father just screaming at them for leaving home. And they are trying to figure out, like, what do they do in that moment? And when they're in that state, we pause and we're like, okay, what do we do? And everybody peer coaches and they give tools. And then we go back in, we're like, okay, let's trigger you again. And now we're going to prompt you to use one of those tools. And it gives you a viscerally different experience in the moment. You're in the state that you need to learn and you're trying on a new skill. And most of the time, people don't do it well. They move like one standard deviation towards doing it a little better or just trying something new. But I find that it ends up being a lot more effective. Things that I practice in Fight Lab, I can actually apply in the real world. And it takes a lot longer to get to the point of like, you're triggered enough to try a new skill and we're stopping you at just the right moment. But I've just ended up being fascinated by this idea of how can we bring more states in when we're teaching skills? How can we help people get into the position where they're going to use it, either through role play or somatics or mentalizing or whatever, so that we're teaching things in an actually valuable, useful way? Curious your thoughts.